Is your parenting hurting your marriage? I can't do it. No, that's not what you said.
What did I say? We'll show you how. I'll forget that I've got to sit up like a freak.
Don't say that. Just stop.
You ready?
Yeah. Welcome back to Adore Your Spouse, where marriages get happier. Have you ever been in this scenario? You've got a child that's been acting up and doing certain behaviors that are really aggravating or really making you and your spouse really angry, and it's going on, and you kind of haven't been able to deal with it well. And one day, this behavior comes up again, and your spouse just loses it, like, the teapot going off. And they kind of rant and yell, and then they call out some kind of horrendous consequence.
Like you're grounded for 2 years.
Well, they probably wouldn't mean that, but
okay,
like you're not going to the prom, even though they spent all their money on the prom, and it's in 2 days, and they're going to bail on the girl. Some kind of horrendous consequence that you're like, that you can't do that.
And you can't do that because the crime doesn't fit the punishment.
Yes.
I mean, the punishment doesn't fit the crime.
Yes.
It just doesn't.
So you're watching a situation where clearly there's a problem. And you're wishing it could go down differently, and you're right. It should have been handled differently. And you're right. That consequence is not the right consequence. So what do? Well, what we do a lot, unfortunately, is that we intervene. We get right in the middle of the problem, right between that parent, your spouse and your child, and you try to shut it down. And usually we end up, especially if we think that our spouse is really angry and shouldn't be, or is giving a consequence that's not fair, then we side with the child.
Well, and so what you've done is that maybe even you're able to resolve this problem, and the consequence isn't administered, but now you've damaged the relationship between you and your spouse.
Yeah. So what happens when you intervene and you say, "Gall, Blaine, that's not what we're going to do. You're just totally out of control right now. Why do you always get like this? Obviously, that's not a consequence
as a hypothetical example
that matches this particular situation," right? Like, I don't know your spouse's name, but I'm just saying, you say that kind of thing in front of the kids. And I've been guilty of this plenty of times.
And it's worse if there's more kids, because there's more damage being done.
Yes, but I do also know people that are chronically this way.
Yeah.
Like they undermine their spouse in front of their children just as a way of being.
Yeah.
And there are major negative consequences that happen here. One major thing that happens is that your child's respect for your spouse decreases. Now, if they're screaming and administering super stupid consequences, the child's already going to respect them a little bit less. So that's already kind of happening, but you aid it. You participate in it. So
and you're putting your stamp of authority that, yeah, they're right, the
Yes.
child's right, and their spouse, the parent, the other parent
And
is
not
wrong.
necessarily that you don't want to communicate to the child. I mean, eventually you want them to understand, yeah, we shouldn't have behaved that way. You want to make those apologies when things are cooled down. But you're saying to the child, he's not important. We don't need to listen to him.
Yeah.
He's not part of the solution.
And if this is chronic, though, then what happens is then the spouse that kind of loses it, right? Pretty soon says, well, it doesn't matter what I do. She's going to correct me, or he's going to correct me.
Yeah.
And then they quit. They'll just
So why bother?
drop out of parenting.
No,
Because
why
what's
bother?
the point? Because everything I do something, I'm going to be undermined.
Yeah. And so I try to get involved, and I try to administer consequences and all this kind of thing to be helpful. And you're always telling me and the kids that it's not good enough, and it's not right, and it's not enough. And so we ask the question, is your parenting hurting your marriage? This is one key thing, one difference you can make right now. And the problem is that in this situation, usually your spouse is wrong. They're out of control, okay? They're angry. But you can participate in the problem, or you can choose out of participating in the problem, and you can help build the relationship between parent and child, or you can help destroy the relationship between parent and child. And in the meantime, you're doing huge damage to your marriage, because what started out as a bad situation has now become worse because they're both that relationship is being splintered. You're participating in hurting your marriage and hurting your spouse's relationship with your child. So somewhere down the road, you're going to want backup. and you're going to want support in your parenting, and your spouse is not going to engage. Then you're going to be more angry and more resentful because what's your problem? Why won't you help me here? You won't even parent.
So how do we solve
You
this?
got to look back and think to yourself, did I participate? Did I help to undermine my child's respect? And did I help to get my spouse to disengage? And if you did, take some responsibility for that and say, look, I'm sorry, I've done this, and I'm going to try to make it better. And my dad, this is a little bit different situation, but when he had children of his own when he married my mom, and he sat down with them very near the beginning and said, she speaks for me. Whatever she says goes. If she gives you a consequence, just know I'm backing her up.
Yeah.
And this kind of problem was really, really solved.
So how do you solve this in the future? There's going to be, because tomorrow this is going to happen.
Yeah.
And your spouse does something. What do you do?
Well, the most important principle here is to present a united front. So you need to not get involved, and then you need to go to your spouse later when they're cooled down and have this conversation. You could even show them this video if that's helpful.
Yeah.
And have this conversation about, I've been undermining you and I'm really sorry and we need a united front. So what do we think now that we're both calmed down would be best for this child?
You gotta let them know, I love you. But I think what you did was wrong because of this, and I think you need a logical reason.
Yeah, I think
because
how
the punishment
you did
doesn't fit the crime, or you were kind of in the heat of passion, and they'll probably say, most would probably say, well, you're right. I was freaking out.
Yeah.
Because now they feel safe.
Yeah.
And then you can go ahead and they might go back and say, I've thought more about it and I've changed my mind. That wasn't a good consequence that I gave you. But obviously we have to address this thing, and then maybe you guys come up with different consequences or something like that. But you've got to figure a way to administer consequences, especially for repeated behaviors. You can get together with your spouse and decide what those, if they do this, what they could be, or get the children involved in making those consequences.
Yeah. And it's important to remember that at least they're trying to be involved.
Yeah.
Maybe they're not doing it the best way, and maybe you guys need to work on your parenting skills together, but you need to present a united front and try to be grateful that your spouse is trying. And show them that you're grateful that they're trying by backing them up and then presenting a united front to your children. And that will do so much good to your relationship, so much healing.
Yep.
So the challenge is to evaluate this kind of thing in your home and ask yourself, do we present a united front to our children? Do our children know that I respect their other parent and that I back them up? And if not, begin to make reparations in that, and it will do a lot of good in your relationship.
And your children will respect you more too, because you're doing it right.
All the relationships will begin to heal. Thanks so much for watching. Please subscribe and share and pass this video on. Head over to Adore Your Spouse for the awesome free resources we have available for you there. And thanks so much for watching. Remember that you can have the happy marriage that you want. Got long. Did you even remember why I had you text? Wait. Okay, sit up tall.
I am.
Oh, see, you get like full 2 inches taller whenever you do. Every time you do it.
Unnatural.